Hey all, welcome back. This is a little share. It's actually an extraction from the longer format of the live Q&A recently. And I thought this question and answer might be generally helpful for some people. I'll try to have it kind of defined in the title so that you're only clicking on it if it's something that will be useful to you in your claim or your post-claim activity with the SSA with regard to other Social Security disability, SSI, dependent benefits, or retirement benefits, or anything else that could touch on the Social Security world that we all swim in right now. So I hope it helps, and I will talk to you later. If you ever want to be there live, that would be Wednesday, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the usually about 2 hours Q&A session, so anybody can ask their Social Security questions if they so desire. Okay, I will see you then. Bye, guys. Tiger Bite. I remember you stating for PTSD that having some physical ailments may help. Well, first of all, if you're trying to grid out, you have no choice. Grids require physical ailments that limit your RFC. I am 62, a combat vet with medical records out the wazoo. Not all will prevent me from working, except probably two. Each one doesn't have to, in and of itself, Tiger Bite, prevent you from working. This is a really good point, guys. It can be a bunch of little impairments that if each one was the only one you had, you would not be disabled by that one alone. You could still be disabled because the combined effect of all of them cuts out all those jobs that you need to cut out. And whether you need to cut out 12,000 jobs or you're over 50 and grids may apply and you don't have to cut out 12,000, you only have to cut out X thousand, something less than that, then it's a beautiful thing. We use those smaller impairments. They are actually, I would say, more important than the big one, only because the big one is the one that the person's been pounding on and going to business, going to treatment for, and it carved out a lot of jobs. I mean, huge amount of jobs, yet it didn't carve out all. And those little ones are the ones that are going to carve out those other ones. I always use the hand example of, oh, wow, I carved out everything, but not the sedentary. Well, most sedentary jobs, not all, but most require fine, dexterous manipulation, whether it's keyboards or stuffing envelopes or fine parts assembly, because apparently that's in substantial numbers in the economy at a factory. Those little arthritis can reduce you from being able to do constantly to frequently or frequently to occasional, depending on how bad it is. I've said this before, though. I see that the SSA is loath to say that arthritis of the fingers reduces someone below frequently. I just see it all the time, even with ALJ hearings. You know what? Someone has arthritis, I think it would be pretty hard to use your fingers for a total of 6 hours a day out of 8. That's a lot. That's called frequent. But they seem to think that's a generous limitation they're applying, as opposed to saying the person has no limitation, therefore they could be using their fingers constantly, 8 out of 8 hours. So they think cutting it down to 6 is being gracious, apparently. But they also know that cutting it down to 6, instead of the reality that maybe you really only use them sporadically during the day because darn, they hurt, stiff and pain and grinding. And carpal tunnel can do the same limitations, not the same effect. And they know that frequent finger use is all that is required of many of those jobs. And that's why I suspect some of them don't want to cut you down to occasional. They want to keep you at, find that it's, yes, it's reduced to frequent, because frequent still means you can do those jobs. Because a lot of those jobs, when you ask a vocational expert at hearing, he'll say, yeah, those need, those jobs require frequent fingering, feeling, or manipulating. And then the judge will then go ahead and find that indeed you are only limited to frequently, not to occasionally, and then you have all these jobs and you can get denied. So, but it is one of the many things when I talk about threading the needle to get to that award through the grids in particular, that's kind of what we're talking about. Getting these little tiny things to getting the record to show the reality of how limited you are in it, instead of just claiming it. Treatment, and being the complainer to your medical providers. Not being all tough and Superman or Superwoman and being gracious. I mean, you can be gracious, but you still got to tell them all the complaints over and over and over again, even if you have to do it through portal messaging before an appointment, so that it's in the file, so in case you forget to tell them, or they forget to write it down, and then you never complained about it at all, right? So you just saw a little clip from one of our live Q&As. It might leave you more questions, particularly if you had a little piece of that applied to you and some more facts that would make things different. If you do, feel free to put a comment down below about the extra details, and we could maybe even make a video on the particular aspects of that you'd be interested in. So in any event, I hope to see you on Wednesdays, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And also 9 o'clock a.m. every day, we have a share from the field, so to speak, of things that happen in our workday. So hope to see you then, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye. Hey, so if the subject matter of the video you just listened to is of interest and you want more on it, stay tuned. Here's another one about the same topic, but a little bit different. Bye now. Okay, guys, we have to go over this one more time. This is concerns when you have an SSI or Social Security disability claim, the real big importance of addressing medically each and every one of your impairments. I continue to see people who focus on the big bad one, the most painful impairment perhaps. And I get it, it seems natural. It's the one that took them out of their job because they could no longer lift 50 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever the case may be. That is generally going to eliminate jobs like the one you had from being recognized as something you could do full time. It's nice. It's not going to win your case, but it's nice. The reason why attorneys like myself nag you to go after that hangnail or that slightly arthritic hand, fingers that you can't maybe type all day long anymore, even though you don't really care to type anyway, and that's not what your job required, is because that's going to help us prove that you can't do any of the 12,000 occupations that supposedly exist out there in the national and regional economies in substantial numbers that we have to prove you cannot do. So I know I'm a broken record, but you have to go after all these things. The bad back might take you out of some heavy work. There's still thousands of jobs that are going to pin on you. Okay. And you're going to see a denial and you're not going to be happy. I hear people say, well, my doctor tells me that half the people he knows on disability, he's seen get on disability are not as bad as I am, implying that he'll just, win like Flynn and no big battle. Nothing can be further from the truth for the majority of people. And I have to question when a doctor says that, because I have yet to meet a doctor that practices, that knows what the vocational and legal rules are concerning a Social Security disability claim. In fact, their little knowledge is a really dangerous thing, because some of them have their patients sitting on their laurels, not doing anything because the doctor says I'm disabled. Well, SSA doesn't really care what your doctor says, not when it comes to whether he thinks you're disabled. What they care about is his meticulous record keeping as to your symptoms, the signs of the impairments, and how they affect you functionally. It's all about how you function. What limits do they make on your day-to-day functioning? That's everything from walking, sitting, standing, pushing, pulling, concentrating, focusing, using your hands, using your fingers, feeling, fingering, manipulating, bending, twisting, crouching. Does your doctor describe those in the records? You don't know? Maybe you should go order your records and find out. Really important. A doctor saying he's disabled and can't work is going to be tossed on his hindside by the SSA in terms of the weight that statement is going to make. It is explicitly reserved for the commissioner and not for a doctor's conclusions. It's not helpful. It can be actually hurtful. I'm also concerned when a doctor makes a conclusion to a patient, because it almost makes me wonder if can be almost a defensive mechanism, so that if the person doesn't win, it's just the SSA's fault and the doctor's records have nothing to do with it. That's not so. If a doctor wants to know what would be helpful for him to opine about, there are lots of ways to find that out. Sometimes we ask them to. Most of them don't care to provide the 3 minutes of time for their patient to put that information on a 3-minute checkbox form. Some doctors will do it because they realize that their records may not make clear what those things are. This is really important both for work accommodations that would be needed if one were to look for a job, which is also helpful for a Social Security disability claim. Both things, which I involve myself in both. When going back to the limiting yourself to just the one big bad thing, when your lawyer or your representative urges you to go to that hand specialist for their arthritic hands, or that numbness and tingling in your fingers that you've been blowing off for 3 years because you've been worrying about your sciatic, take heed. Because if you don't, you and you alone are reducing your chances of winning, right? You're also, if you are eventually going to win, you are encouraging it to take much longer. So you're the one that has to live with that. No one else has to live your life. So I just want to reiterate that. The same would be true. Sometimes people have migraines. This is just another example. And they see the neurologist once a year for follow-up. I would recommend you do more than that. Keep a migraine journal. Maybe see your migraine specialist more than once a year so they can see the fluctuating happenstances of your migraines. Provide a calendar that shows which days you had migraines in every given month, whether there was vomiting, photophobia, phonophobia, were you bedridden in the dark. Don't ignore the migraines because you're worrying again about the sciatic or the bad shoulder or the hips, that you just maybe even had a hip replacement. You have to be able to, for the most part, we have to show more than one impairment, because that one impairment is going to carve out a bunch of jobs, but not all of them, and we have to carve out all of them. So there's no such thing as an A-, okay, in Social Security disability. You either get the whole kit and caboodle or you don't. Okay, so that's it for this lovely holiday season. I'm freezing. I don't know about you. I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday and a Merry Christmas, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year, if not sooner. Take care now.